Hello wonderful person, this is Anton, and for years now I've been making science videos, specifically education videos, and more specifically, space education videos. But, you know, it's been really hard, and I figured even though I like doing those videos, they're really time consuming. It's actually super hard to make stuff every day. But then I really love making videos, and I figured I'm gonna try something different. And also when making videos I get super hungry, and all of this kind of suddenly connected into this one brilliant idea. I'm gonna change my channel. From now on, we're going to be a mukbang channel. And it's brilliant, because it doesn't take much, just takes food. All I have to do is eat on camera, and all you have to do is watch me eat. So win-win for everyone, and I'm no longer going to be hungry either. So let's just get rid of some of my old books here. I don't think I'm going to need this quantum mechanics book anymore, so it's gonna be just my table here. And let's start with something simple today. Just a regular noodle dish. And this is actually really cool. It's called jjajangmyeon. It's a Korean noodle that was originally introduced here by the Chinese immigrants in the early 1900s. And officially at least, this is a dish from China, but it became so Koreanized that today it's known as a Korean dish. Moreover, if you look at this historically, oh wait a second, I'm not supposed to teach you anything anymore. I'm just gonna eat. So here we go. I kind of made it really tiny. I don't like when it's too noodly, it gets splashy. So yeah, it's hard to pick up. Alright, here we go. It's not too bad. I think it's a little bit sweet. Could use maybe a little bit more salt. But, I mean, it's my first dish. And, wait, am I supposed to make so much noise when I eat? This is not really an ASMR channel yet. Oh, hey, ASMR is not a good idea. Maybe I should start making those too. Let's try this first. Let's try mukbang. And also, let's actually change the background. I don't really do space anymore. So, yeah, here we go. This is more appropriate. This is actually what jjajangmyeon is supposed to look like. It's sort of more attractive, has an egg in it, some cucumbers. Mine, however, is a little bit more disappointing. But I'm hungry, so I'm gonna eat it anyway. Oh no, I just dropped some on my foot. I'm gonna have to clean this up later. What do people do when they do these mukbangs? Do they talk? I really should have watched someone else's channel first. Or do people just listen to me eat? It's very disturbing. Oh hey, did you know that noodles have actually existed in some form or another for at least 4,000 years, possibly even longer? Apparently, there's at least one ancient book in China where noodles are mentioned in 200 BC, I believe. But not so long ago, specifically about 5 years ago, the archaeologists in China actually discovered this old pot containing these really primitive but still noodles, and they were approximately 4,000 years old. This is known as the Lajia archaeological site, and so many different cool things have been discovered there. But honestly, I think the noodles were the coolest. I mean, nobody really expected to find 4,000-year-old noodles there. And I think I would really like to try them, but I'm guessing they're not very edible. Although honestly, my creation doesn't really look much better, I bet. And curiously enough, for about 2,000 years, the noodles have been a staple food in at least some countries somewhere in the world. In Asia, for the most part, they've been a staple for this whole time. But even though there's no doubt that they came from Asia, it's not really certain if they all started in Asia. As a matter of fact, wait, hold on, let me finish this. It's actually kind of tasty. As a matter of fact, about 2,000 years ago, this Roman person right here, known as Galen or Galenus as it says right there, in one of his books described an interesting mixture of flour and water called yttrion that was apparently consumed by many different people in the region, which was later also consumed by people in Jerusalem and Palestine, although they used the name yttrium, also known as yttria, and it's also even mentioned in one of the passages in the Jewish Talmud. And whatever they were eating resembled noodle to some extent, which I should be eating more of and less talking. I'm not supposed to educate anyone anymore, I'm supposed to just eat. And I gotta tell you, it is really good. Anyway, back to education. It's not really entirely clear who came up with this and why exactly it was made in a certain way, but it was very different from the noodles found in China, specifically because it was made from wheat and not from this other thing called millet, which is not as tasty and does produce really rough noodles. I've tried it once, it wasn't that good. This one here is made from wheat. It's actually really good. And in a nutshell, it's possible that two noodles were actually created by two different cultures, but they eventually all ended up being kind of similar. But it's also possible that a lot of the noodle recipes or the idea behind noodles might have been brought through the so-called Silk Road, because China, as you probably know, did trade with a lot of different cultures even in the past. And it's also known that roughly around 1500 years ago, some of the Arab travelers did consume something similar to yttrium and something similar to ancient noodles that was dried and consumed on the way to some of the trade locations that they use normally. So in other words, it's still possible that all of this did come from China. And this noodle in particular came from my fridge and it's not very good. But that's another story. That's because I have to learn how to cook better. And those millet noodles I mentioned from 4,000 years ago, well, people still make them today. Although today, in China at least, they're seen as a kind of a, well, without making the sound too harsh, basically poor people's food. Because of the roughness of the texture and because they're not very tasty, millet noodles are generally not really consumed in major cities. You usually only find them in rural locations. And by the way, the noodles in those spots from 4,000 years ago surprisingly resemble what's known as lamian today. Lamian is a Chinese noodle that's famous for being hand-stretched. It's made in the way that you see in this video, with the word lamian itself then becoming ramen used in Japan. But originally though, all of this started in certain regions in China, basically a few thousand years ago. But all of the restaurant noodles we eat today, all of the pasta and all of the different types of pasta that you see in this picture, all of this naturally started in Italy. And specifically Italy in 13th and 14th century. And so back then in Italy, in various regions, various types of pasta started to take shape and, well, eventually became the pasta we know today. But it turns out that a lot of this pasta might have actually originally come from a single region, from Sicily. And more specifically, from the Norman Sicily, the Sicily that was invaded by the Vikings. And it just so happens that in 12th century, Norman Sicily was the region very well known for the production of something they referred to as yttria, which goes back to that original yttrium that was described by one of those Roman guys I mentioned previously. But if we start looking at the history of Sicily, right before it became Norman, for hundreds of years, it was under Arab influence. And as I mentioned previously, yttrium was one of those Arab dishes that a lot of different traders took with them on the way to various locations. And so it's quite possible that for hundreds of years, this yttrium, this initial noodle from Europe, was basically produced by these Arab settlers in Sicily, then adopted by the Normans, then adopted by the Italians, and eventually making its way to the rest of Europe and of course America. And I'm gonna shut up and just eat, because this is not bad. This is pretty good. Even by my standards, this is not too bad. And so here we can totally solve this mystery and possibly even trace this back all the way to China. So all of this pasta that came from various regions in Italy very likely originated from Sicily, which was initially made there by the Arab settlers who used it for various travels and I guess in some sense for a kind of an energy snack to travel across various regions, because, you know, if you dry pasta, because of the sugars in it, it does actually give you quite a lot of energy. But they probably learned all of this by going through the regions where ancient Chinese were making their noodles. They just realized that they don't have to use millet, they realized they can use other stuff like wheat, which is how eventually wheat noodles were born. But the original noodle and the original recipe for the stretched, fried, hand-pulled concoction that we call noodles most likely did come from that one region in China where we managed to find a 4,000-old pot with some leftover noodles in it. But one mystery is still unsolved, and that's the mystery of why I cook so bad. No, that's the mystery of the name noodle. It's from the German noodle, and as far as I know, nobody knows what it means. It just came into existence in 19th century, and it doesn't mean anything. So, yeah, what is noodle? It's not called that in China, so yeah, there we have it. Anyway, so it's been a failure in my mukbang. I keep talking too much. I keep trying to make you learn, and I'm still hungry, so I'm gonna just finish this. And well, you guys have an amazing April Fool's Day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Stay wonderful. Bye-bye. And if you do get a chance, try judging me on it. It's actually really, really good.